This is from Time Frickin' Magazine. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. So that's what they're talking about, the shadow campaign. So this is just one small part of it. This is what they did. They worked behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. And just so you know, nothing to worry about. They weren't rigging the election. They were fortifying it. Do you want to know? And they did it all in secret, because that's how you fortify elections, by doing things in secret and not being transparent. So I'm going to show you what they did. For decades, campaigns have grappled with everything from anonymous calls claiming the election has been rescheduled to flyers spreading nasty smears about candidates' families. That's normal politics, right? Well, someone named Laura Quinn, a veteran operative who co-founded Catalyst, she piloted a nameless secret project which she has never before publicly discussed that tracked disinformation online and how to combat it. In secret. In secret. One component was tracking dangerous lies that might otherwise spread unnoticed. Researchers then provided information to campaigners or the media to track down the sources and expose them. I'm guessing one of those lies wasn't about Papadopoulos not working for the CIA. I guess they didn't track that one down. They didn't do that? Okay, hang on, we'll keep going. She concluded the solution was to pressure platforms to enforce their rules, both by removing content or accounts that spread disinformation and by more aggressively policing in the first place. Laura Quinn's research gave ammunition to advocates pushing social media platforms to take a harder line. And in November of 2019, Mark Zuckerberg invited 9 civil rights leaders to a dinner at his home. I'm sure he invited them, and they didn't pressure him for a meeting. I'm sure this was his idea. So he invites 9 civil rights leaders to his house for dinner in November of 2019, where they warned him about the danger of election-related falsehoods that were already spreading unchecked. It took pushing, urging, conversations, brainstorming, all of that to get to a place where we ended up with more rigorous rules and enforcement. What that means, rigorous rules and enforcement, that means we had way more censorship being done at our behest through Facebook and Twitter. That's what that means. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, that's what that means. And who said this? Wait till who said that. Who said all this? Who said it took pushing, urging, conversations, brainstorming to get more rigorous censorship? Someone named Vanita Gupta. Who is Vanita Gupta? Well, she's the CEO of Leadership Conference on Civil Rights, and they also met with Jack Dorsey from Twitter. So they're pushing for censorship hard, and they got it. Was it enough? Probably not. Was it later than we wanted? Yes. But it was really important, given the level of official disinformation that they had that had those rules in place and were tagging things and taking them down. So it was successful. They were super successful, this push by these civil rights leaders. Vanita Gupta. Vanita Gupta has been nominated for the Associate Attorney General by she's in the Biden administration. What I guess was a civil rights leader who was pushing for censorship. No true civil rights leader is ever going to push for censorship because they know that is going to immediately be used on actual. Do you think Malcolm X pushed for censorship, or Fred Hampton, or Malcolm X, or MLK? Do you think they pushed for fucking censorship? Those were real civil rights leaders. Vanita Gupta is a tool of the Biden administration, pushing for censorship to shield the establishment from people's free speech. That is kind of amazing. There it is. Biden announces he will nominate Lisa Monaco and Vanita Gupta for top Justice Department posts. By the way, Facebook purges left-wing pages, and there it is. We've covered this. Facebook shuts down socialist websites. Facebook shuts down the major left-wing group in Britain. Facebook disables pages of the Baltimore People's Power Assembly, and its administration deletes pages for Struggle, La Luca, and Socialist United Party. And look at this. Here's a dinner with Mark Zuckerberg. That's Barack Obama. That's Steve Jobs. That's Zuckerberg. That's Steve Wesley from the Wesley Group. That's Dore, spouse of the partner from Kleiner Perkins. There's Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google. There's Art Levinson from Green Tech. There's Larry Ellison from Oracle. There's John Chambers from Cisco. There's Reed Hastings from Netflix. There's Carol Bartz from Yahoo. John Hennessy from Stanford. And there's Dick Costello from the Twitter. They're all getting together, hanging out. So that's from Time Magazine, and they don't think this is they don't think this is a bad thing to tell people. Time Magazine thinks this is very cute. What would be your so all I'm saying is, imagine if Trump said, "Hey, there's a secret cabal working behind the scenes to censor free speech that would hurt the Biden campaign." They would call him crazy. This is what Time Magazine is actually uncovering and almost bragging about. Max, what is your response to this article in Time Magazine?
Well, it just reminds me of a dynamic that played out throughout the Trump era, where early on, when Trump noticed that there were elements within the national security state, within big tech, and within the general architecture of the permanent government that transitions from administration to administration with a predominant ideology of centrism, that he was being targeted by the deep state, that he was called a conspiracist, and they said, Trump, you're crazy. There is no deep state. I remember David Remnick at the New Yorker, he wrote an article about how the deep state simply doesn't exist. Then, as the Trump administration proceeded, there were a flurry of articles about how the deep state not only exists, but it's great because it's fighting Trump, and we need to love the deep state. I don't know if it was Nicholas Kristof at the New York Times who wrote a tribute to the deep state, but then, all of the never-Trumpers and the neoliberals, they all became, deep state firsters, or they love the deep state. And so this article, it reflects the same dynamic, where basically after January 6th, all these people who effectively are a part of what you could call the deep state, and are certainly a part of the Democratic Party's kind of corporate scaffolding and legal scaffolding, and big tech as well, they all want credit for taking Trump out, because everyone hates Trump so much. He's basically he's going to be put on trial effectively. They want credit. They're like, we did it. We conspired. We were a secret cabal. We shut down pro-Trump information. We censored people. We put pressure on the tech giants, and the tech giants are doing whatever we want now. They're in our pocket. We don't know what deals were cut there. Did they say, okay, we won't go so hard on you. We won't try to regulate you and break up your ghastly monopoly, Mark Zuckerberg? We don't know what took place there, but they're proud of what they did. And it's only weirdos like us who see something slightly wrong with it, that basically these people are determining what we see and hear. And we can't go out and say they're violating our free speech rights, because this is all taking place within a private space online, a corporatized space that functions as our digital commons, our cybernetic version of Hyde Park, where there are no First Amendment protections, where they're just vague terms of use set by Jack Dorsey. And now that the Democrats run Congress, I mean, look at Jeff Bezos resigning from Amazon. Why did he do that? For the same reason Bill Gates left Microsoft right as the pandemic hit. The rats are are fleeing from the ship because regulation is possible. They might get broken up. They might get hauled before Congress now that the Democrats are in charge, and they're removing all these websites because they want to curry favor with whoever's in power right now. And then there's the other dynamic, which is actually more insidious and more dangerous, which is what we cover constantly at the Gray Zone, is that it's not just Democrats and elected officials who are calling for censorship, or Democratic affiliated activist types like Vanita Gupta, who is not the worst person when it comes down to the people compared to many of the other people in Washington. It's the national security state. Where do these big tech firms get the big contracts? The CIA. Amazon hosts the CIA's cloud, gets $600 million to do that. Amazon owns the Washington Post. So that's sort of a conflict of interest from a paper that's constantly quoting unnamed US officials to cultivate public hatred and fear of Russia and China. Amazon has also got big lucrative contracts with the Pentagon. Eric Schmidt at Google is doing the same thing. He's basically a national security contractor. Larry Ellison at Oracle contracts with the CIA. That's why it's based in Northern Virginia. That's what big tech does. And so when the national security state wants to enforce some censorship through its various cutouts, like the Atlantic Council, for example, which is funded by the arms industry. It's funded by the U.S. Department of State, the British Foreign Office, all these Gulf states.
And Facebook uses they use the Atlantic Council as some kind of arbiter to tell us who should be censored and who shouldn't. And because of you just told us who funds them. It's ridiculous. It's like asking the CIA who should we be deplatforming.
Exactly. And Facebook is consulting with them. Facebook just hired someone named Ben Nimmo, who might be unknown to most of your listeners and viewers, but he's someone I'm really familiar with because he was at the Atlantic Council. He was leading their efforts on censoring and identifying quote-unquote Russian bots. And he identified real people as Russian bots and got their Twitter accounts suspended, including a Ukrainian concert pianist who's fairly famous named Val Lisitsa, because she was tweeting things that contravened the NATO line on Russia. She was challenging the official story around the Skripal poisoning, for example. She was challenging the official story around the Duma deception, which Aaron Mate has written a lot about. And so she was identified as a Russian bot by this guy and removed. He's being rewarded for this kind of behavior. He also was, secretly consulting for a British troll farm called the Integrity Initiative. No one even knew it existed until its emails were apparently hacked and then leaked, and it showed that this was Facebook was actually funding it too, but the British Foreign Office was paying tens of millions of dollars to military intelligence officers to create these different clusters of journalists and activists, neocon pundits, to generate a more anti-Russian narrative in the US and throughout Europe, and to attack public officials who were not hawkish enough on Russia. They actually got a national security official in Spain removed after running a smear campaign through the media. But Ben Nimmo is secretly consulting for this group. And he's not a data expert. He's not even a journalist. His former job was as a NATO press officer. So this is who Facebook is hiring to set the censorship agenda. And you can imagine who's in the crosshairs. Right now, of course, it's the far right in the crosshairs. You saw Gateway Pundit get removed from Twitter yesterday. Its founder, Jim Hoft, was removed. I'm not a big fan of him. He's probably smeared me 100 times in the past. He comes out of that Breitbart world. And but there's no explanation for why they were censored, except that it seems like the Democrats want them gone. But then you have Socialist Worker, as you pointed out, in the UK. They are like a Trotskyist Marxist group that has been heavily penetrated by police spies in the UK. There have been several scandals where the British police have sent in spies to infiltrate this group, to try to push them towards criminal activity, and now they're removed. And I think that relates to big tech's relationship with the national security state And I think, they're going to come for people like you next, us next.
No doubt about it. They're they're deplatforming everybody who's to the left of Hillary Clinton. Of course, if you're on the corporate algorithm, you will be spared, right? Like the Young Turks are on the corporate algorithm. Jeffrey Katzenberg is one of the most powerful men in media. He's not going to let his $20 million investment in a YouTube company get demonetized. He'll call up the guy, the head of Google. It's not Eric Schmidt anymore. I don't even know who it is. But he'll call him up and say, hey, it's the Young Turks, you can't demonetize. And so that they're all covered. And if you're on the Comcast network, you'll be covered. And anybody who's corporate is going to be okay. Right, but it's independent people, and so that's what. Yeah, I know I'm in their crosshairs already. Look who's editing my Wikipedia page. It's the intelligence community. It's not I can't edit it. They do.
No, I mean, people will call you crazy for saying that, but I would urge anyone who doubts Jimmy to look at his page and who's editing it, and look at the disproportionate entries by Philip Cross. Who has edited something like 40% of my page. He goes into any anti-imperialist, anti-war voices page and simply vandalizes it and tries to pepper the page with as many suggestions as possible that the subject of it is some kind of Russian spy, some kind of Russian agent.
Or a conspiracy theorist, or some kind of a badger. It would be like if you went to New York Times Wikipedia page and they led with, hey, they got the Iraq war wrong, they got this wrong, they got that. It's like if their whole Wikipedia page was about how shitty the New York Times is, which you could do that. But that's what they did to me at Wikipedia. It's like every shitty thing that anybody ever said, but you can't put good stuff in there. You can't put, and you can't even put the fact that, they'll say, hey, CNN called Jimmy a conspiracy theorist over Syria, but they won't say, you can't put in, but Jimmy was proven right, and CNN was proven incorrect.
Right. You can't quote you.
No.
Responding. And no one knows who Philip Cross is. The amount of entries that Philip Cross applies to his enemies or targets pages is industrial grade, which indicates that it could be many people. We don't know if Philip Cross is affiliated with the government. We do know that Jimmy Wales, Wikipedia's CEO, has explicitly said that he approves of Philip Cross's behavior and activity. And Jimmy Wales is married to Tony Blair's former diary secretary. I mean, he's a part of the Davos crowd, the kind of crowd that hates your populist message, if you can call it that. And we can get deeper into the weeds and show how Philip Cross and others have gotten the gray zone to become a deprecated source on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
so you're not allowed to use us as a source on Wikipedia. So it's not just censorship where somebody gets their whole page removed. It's an intricate campaign to basically suppress through algorithmic pseudoscience and troll farming our voices until we are never heard from again. And I think what they're going to do next is go after podcasts. Steve Bannon was the beta test for that. His podcast was removed from various sites because he said like some people should be beheaded. But it's not going to just be right wingers. And then they're going to go after Substack and Patreon, because those two models are really threatening traditional journalism and corporate media right now. And their executives are going to be hauled in sooner or later and told, you got to take these sites down. What we're witnessing is a complete loss in confidence by the centrist elite that really holds power in this country. The military intelligence complex apparatus, big tech, corporate media, aspects of academia and Congress, they've completely lost faith in the American public. They're terrified of a substantial sector of the American public, which they hold responsible for January 6th, and they're going to apply anti-democratic controls to try to prevent this mob from raging at them. And it's going to affect us in ways we can't even imagine. We are witnessing the growth of the great American firewall.
I mean, just look at this. If this paragraph, you don't find this chilling, then I don't know what you're doing. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage. A well-funded cabal of powerful people are steering the media coverage and controlling the flow of information. And they do that by censoring people like Max and me. That's how they steer the media coverage and control the flow of information.